there's only so much that we can do because we are a small channel. We're not a channel that corporate media is going to say, oh, did you see what those guys were talking about today? But there was somebody that was talking about the USS Liberty today. Somebody who has a very large platform. And somebody who I think we both can agree is going to go scorched earth for the next 7 months while he's on Capitol. Here's Thomas Massie.
It's my great honor, maybe one of the biggest honors of my lifetime, to stand here on the floor and do something that's 59 years overdue, to recognize the survivors and those who gave their lives on the USS Liberty 59 years ago today, when they were viciously attacked by IDF jets, and also after that by torpedo boats. I'm going to tell you a little bit of their story. And there, by the way, there's at least a dozen of them here today with us. I just met with them in my office, and they related this story to me. You know, it was a clear day. The USS Liberty was one of the most technologically sophisticated ships in the Navy, but it was virtually unarmed, and it was sent to observe the six-day war going on in the Middle East between Israel and its neighbors. It arrived on June 7th, and the weather was clear. The planes came out to meet them, to investigate, and then on the next day, on June 8th, they started the day. The visibility was unlimited. The American flag was flying proudly on the USS Liberty. More planes came from Israel to surveil the boat, the ship. And they thought they were in good shape, but what happened next surprised them all. French Mirage jets showed up, and for 25 minutes, strafed and attacked the USS Liberty. They shot rockets. They shot 30-millimeter cannons into the hull and into the ship. They even dropped napalm on the bridge of the ship. This was an effort to kill everybody on board. There was no intention of taking prisoners. After the 25 grueling minutes of attack on this virtually unarmed ship, and they thought things were over and they could recover, the torpedo boats showed up, 3 torpedo boats. They launched 4 torpedoes. One of them hit the hull of the USS Liberty and killed 25 people instantly. It blew a 40-foot by 40-foot hole in the side of this ship. They were intent on sinking it. But they were also intent on not having a single survivor.
Now, we all know why they didn't want a survivor. Are we right? Am I right, Jen?
Well, this, look, what their real intent, right? Are they trying to do a false flag? That's what it looks like to everybody. But I do need to point out is something that David Hunter did say, that Thomas Massie has had 13 years to talk about this, and I don't think he has. So I'm just putting that out there as it's a reasonable comment to make. So I don't know if it's that he feels more at liberty to do so now that I thought he would be the kind of person that wouldn't care about that anyway, but yet there we are.
Well, you sure know how to poo-poo the shit out of something positive, but
I was just pointing out what somebody said in their chat.
Well, we love David, but David's a Debbie Downer 24/7, so it's not anything new. David's always had glasses half empty. So here's a glasses half empty response. Who the hell else on Capitol Hill has said anything about this in this position? Nobody. Nobody talks about it. Nobody cares about it. Again, the reason that they don't, it's not even necessarily that they don't care about it. It's that they understand that there is a code of silence that exists. This is what John Kiriakou said when he was sitting with Theo Vaughn the other day. There is an understanding on Capitol Hill that Israel is the one guardrail you can't cross. You just can't do it. Because if you do, you put everybody else in a vulnerable position. But Massie has come to the conclusion that this experiment of the American empire has failed. And we need a revolution. Now, what revolution looks like in his mind is probably different than what it looks like in our mind, but it still draws a similar conclusion in that this system can't stand. How could it? And it took this long, but I sent a message to Phil Turney and to anybody else who's there today. And I hope that there are other congressional representatives that are at least acknowledging what this is all about. But remember, and we talk about this constantly, the change is not going to come from the halls of Congress. The change is going to come from us outside. They're going to have no choice but to change. When enough people decide, like the Albanians have decided, that they don't want the Zayos in their country anymore, when we start acting like them, then we might get somewhere.
Well, we're never going to act like them. Again, now you're talking about a people that are very connected to a culture and a land and a history, right? We don't have that here. The people here, land is just something that you buy, and there's no real connection. So that's why it's impossible for people like Ivanka to understand what that really is.
I agree.
Torpedo boats showed up, 3 torpedo boats. They launched 4 torpedoes. One of them hit the hull of the USS Liberty and killed 25 people instantly. It blew a 40-foot by 40-foot hole in the side of this ship. They were intent on sinking it. But they were also intent on not having a single survivor. According to eyewitness accounts, the Israelis machine gunned the lifeboats that they put down. They machine gunned the firefighters who were on the deck. They were bringing the wounded and the dead to the mess hall to triage them. They had one doctor who was trying to help them all, put a few stitches in. It was harrowing, and it's amazing. If not for that crew, that boat would have sunk that day. But it still wasn't over. Helicopters showed up, combat helicopters. And the USS Liberty, even though their signals were being jammed by the Israelis, got a signal out. And there were ships that tried to respond. The USS Saratoga, the USS America sent planes. Both of them sent planes to help the USS Liberty. And something happened that's never happened before. A ship under attack, the planes were recalled. This has never happened before. And they sat there for 17 hours. 34 dead, 174 wounded, out of 294 crew members. That's over 70% casualty rate, unheard of. The Israelis were intent on leaving no survivor. And what about our own military? Why did they not send anybody for 17 hours to help these men? So what really happened? You know, the official reports say that it was a case of mistaken identity. But if you listen to Dean Rusk, former Secretary of State, Richard Helms, CIA Director, Bobby Ray Inman, head of the NSA, Captain Ward Boston, who was the chief counsel of the Court of Inquiry. If you listen to Admiral Moore, who served in Pearl Harbor, Midway, commanded both the Atlantic and Pacific Fleet, and was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, none of these distinguished men think this was an accident. They think it was intentional murder by the country of Israel, either as a false flag operation or because they simply didn't want anybody observing what they were doing that day. Well, I've got a call to action for everybody here. Honor these individuals. Quit ignoring that they exist. Go to their website, ussliberty.org. Support them. And while they're still alive, they need closure. Let's give them closure. Let's have an investigation. Let's pass a resolution honoring them. It's long overdue. And then they can have their justice. With that, I yield back. And I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a declaration of Ward Boston declaring that the only official court of inquiry was invalid.
Without objection, so ordered.
I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes.
I don't know what that does. You know, I mean, it seems, mostly symbolic.
Well, when you get more people talking about it, that's half the battle.
Okay. That's all right. That's cool.
You know, Massie's willing to
if
do
that helps.
Does
but
it
why
not?
didn't he do it sooner? Why do you think Massie never brought this up sooner? It isn't because he didn't know.
Your guess is as good as mine. Nobody's infallible, Jen.
I'm just asking,
No, You're looking for an excuse to say it's not good enough. What
No, I'm just pointing it out.
I think everybody is either embarrassed or flawed or I think that Massie was always well-intentioned, but I do think something happened to him when his wife died. And I think he kind of had like an epiphany moment where he realized that I have to do what is necessary, even if it costs me my job. And as much as it may very well have cost him his job, legitimately or not, his decision was the right one. Because in the end, he has the courage of his convictions in a way that other people don't. Everybody knows about the USS Liberty that's on Capitol Hill. You can't not know about it. You can't not know that this is the only maritime attack in the history of our country in which we didn't retaliate.
Right.
That is a fact. Only one.
Right.
This wasn't some mistaken identity. This is very clear cut what this was. This was another attempt at a Gulf of Tonkin incident. We all know now Gulf of Tonkin was bullshit. That's why we ended up in Vietnam. We know that Vietnam escalation in part is why Kennedy was assassinated. We all know that the interests of Israel and the greater Israel project has always been at the forefront of their intentions. This goes back to its creation. And when people are seeing the greater Israel project now, it's not like this was something that they just thought of recently. This is something that they wanted back in 1967. And they probably would have gotten it if they sank the ship. They probably would have, because dead men tell no tales.
Who knows? Maybe, well, maybe, but it didn't seem to make that much of a difference either way. I don't know if it would have. Would they have then been able to say, oh, it was the Egyptians, so now we have, but they already were going after the Gulf Arab states. I don't know. I think in this particular case, it's really hard to know what would have transpired.